responsible for the research program at the university. I very early at that time period in my life became acquainted with David. He was working as a botanist with the people, the horticulturalists in Miami-Dade County to try and facilitate their growth as an industry. And he worked on the miracles of light and their effect on plant growth, and developed and invented a method using shade cloth to that end. And as a result of that, David was able to help the institution grow in its knowledge of the patent process. And we had a lot of experience that way, which otherwise we wouldn't have had. But David made other contributions. He grew the botany program here with his colleagues and built it into a leading program, so that outside reviewers told us that we had a world-class tropical botany program. He's worked with other institutions in our community to build them. And he's worked to build the university in a number of ways, by beautifying the campus, planting the trees and the plants that would be used not only to beautify the campus, but to instruct our students. Our campus became a laboratory, a classroom in botany, botanical science. In addition to that, as every good professor, he wandered the world, literally in this case, South and Southeast Asia, to learn more about his discipline and to bring back that knowledge to us. And he shared it generously with us for many, many years here at FIU. Additionally, he also brought back and presented to us Indian metaphysics, the study of energy and energy fields, and through his acquaintance with teachers from that area. David also has made available to us through his publishing a wealth of knowledge on plants and the color of plants and what that means personally and scientifically. In addition to that, he's helped us to appreciate and understand the world around us, plants and trees. And with Stacy West, has published a book here, The Wayside Trees of Tropical Florida. So if you see and love the color that of green and all the flowery colors, you can read about the science of it here as well. He's been an educator, not just of students, not just of his colleagues, but of his entire community, and has helped to build it economically over the long term. So I am very proud as a colleague to say that I am a university professor. I'm challenged to do something as broad and as contributing to the welfare of our community and our students as David Lee. David Lee has our highest respect collectively as a former faculty member, now 4 years retired, but still fresh in our presence by his repeated visits. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce to you my highly esteemed colleague and good friend, David Lee.
We had a lot of fun together. I'd go over to sponsor research for some trivial little problem that Tom would be in his office. Go in there, we'd talk about the environmental history of China or whatever it was for like an hour and a half. So I remember that, Tom, and that's the best thing about being a professor at the university, and a dialogue. So appreciate it. A little bit about this talk. Of course, I had very strong connections with nature as a child, which led to other things. As an adolescent, I got interested in art and watercolor, and I used to go backpacking in the Cascade Mountains in Washington State, where I grew up, and do sketches. Eventually, I lost that, but I became a photographer, and then I discovered science. So, in a sequence, like the nature, the art, and science came that way in my life. At the same time, talking a little bit about that history, I just want to put that in the perspective of what's going on now. We have these enormous economic forces that play in the world, which are resulting in this very rapid change in our climate and the destruction of the biodiversity, all the building blocks of life on this planet. And it doesn't look good. And it's not the kind of thing that you can sort of just lay it out, rationally and say, this is bad, because it's going to be bad for many people in 20 years. It's not urgent. I know that about 2 months ago we had this big thing about global warming and sea level rise in Miami. Rolling Stone had a great article about it in the press. What's it like now? What are we talking about now? So it became clear to me that over the years of teaching about the environment, about environmental issues, that we have to do better than that. We have to somehow help people an emotional connection to the world in such a way that they care about it enough to really do something about it, personally, and also to get involved in organizations to affect change. And what I'm going to talk about tonight is the role of art and helping to make those emotional connections that could lead to some sort of change, more substantive change. So what I'm going to do in my talk tonight is I want to talk about this political post. I want to use this quote here, which sort of reinforces what I just said. And that is, this is a famous quote by Baba Doom, who was actually an agriculturalist in Senegal. It's one of the most famous quotes in the environmental movement. In the end, we will conserve only what we love. We will love only what we understand, and we will understand only what we are taught. So the sense of that is that if you teach these students, these lessons, then they will understand it, they'll love it, and then they'll change. But I really don't think it works that way at all. I think the way it works is that kids have an experience in nature that changes their life. These are like epiphanies that they can remember, that I can remember 70 years later, or 16 years later. And so what it really is, I think, is that we love what we experience, much of its nature as a child, if we have that opportunity. And then we learn about it, and we understand it, and then we affect change. But I think at the heart of it, that emotion is that emotional attachment at the very beginning. And that's where the creative arts, I think, is going to come into play. So I put these books in there because a motivation in writing these books was to somehow write in such a way that I could touch people, at least in some parts of the book, so that they would think about that. And particularly the Color book, the last chapter. That is very much about the subject. So here's what we're going to do tonight. You know what you're in for. I'm going to show you about a 4-minute presentation. It's just slides and music. It's about nature, and you can just watch it. I'm not going to talk, say a word, and then we'll maybe talk a little bit when it's over. But then I'm going to talk after that about science and art and nature. And then at the end of that, I'll give some examples of art, stuff I've seen in life, like going to art basel galleries and so forth, which I do a lot of them. And then there'll be another slide essay with music at the end for about 8 minutes. So, before I start the first one, I want to give you a couple of quotes. Walt Whitman, about birds. This slides are about this change of seasons in the Northeast. About birds and trees and flowers and watercraft, a certain free margin and even vagueness, perhaps ignorance, credulity, helps your enjoyment of these things and of the sentiment of feathered, wooded, river, or marine nature generally. I repeat it. Don't want to know too exactly, or the reasons why. Walt Whitman. And on the other hand, you've got Edmund Arlington Robinson writing, the gods are growing old, the stars are singing golden hair to gray green leaf, to yellow leaf, or chlorophyll to xanthophyll. More scientific. So let's see this whole presentation. So, I want to talk a little bit about similarities between artists and scientists. Is there anyone here that's an artist? And when I say scientists, I mean particularly life science biologists. Well, the first thing is that we don't do it because we're generally because we're going to make a lot of money. So there's got to be high motivation for what we do. In the arts, it's tough. I know that. To be a professional artist and a living is tough. In biology, generally what happens is that you go from postdoc to postdoc for 10, 12 years, and then you eventually, if you're lucky, you get a job. And then you're okay. You got to go through the tenure process. So it's not an easy road for either of these careers. Scientists, they create hypotheses and devise experiments. And from the results of those experiments, or a series of experiments, they actually create stories, narratives of a certain sort, and they write scientific papers. The hypothesis part of the process is actually very creative. So the most challenging thing is to create something that you can test that's really new, novel, that can change the direction of the field. So that's what the artists have a creative impulse. They have that impulse gets translated through technique to a series of artworks. You might consider like a show at a gallery might be the equivalent to a scientific paper. So there are parallels in the process. And one of the parallels is that both artists and scientists use technology. And in science we call our technology the things that we learn in our discipline. The toolkit, that's what we call it. So it depends on your toolkit, the kinds of things you can do. In art you have media and techniques, but you also have techniques limits or allow you to do certain things in ways similar to science. I think in both of these fields, both art and in science, there's a feeling that it's the ideas that are really important, and the techniques enable you to study them or test them or what have you. But too often we get bogged down in the techniques, the technology that limits what we can do, and we forget the really basic part of it sometimes. So I think that's an issue probably in visual art. It's also an issue in biology. In both fields, in science, publications eventually will give you a reputation, which will give you a better job or whatever. You write a book and make $1,000. And in the arts, the works of art are displayed in galleries. They're commercial galleries. They're sold, purchased. They have these to recognition and bigger shows, and bigger sales, bigger museums. So there's a track for success that are sort of similar in both of these. And I must say that being at FIU, I've always had really good friends in visual arts. People I would hang out with. One of my highlights, I fought against football here about 12 years ago. Put up a good fight, but I was crushed. Anyway, in that, Bill McGuire thought that was pretty great fight, but I think it'd be good for you. I cherish. So there are these similarities, but really what I want to mainly talk about is science and art and nature. So I want to organize this with three words, three pronouns: it, we, and I. And this is a concept that comes from the writing of Ken Wilber, who was a philosopher and a Buddhist, I guess. So it includes the subject matter of the natural sciences, using the scientific method, to a certain extent in philosophy. And it refers to objects that can be measured, analyzed, and tested, through hypothesis testing. That's the scientific method. We refers to culture, us interacting with each other, And so there are social sciences that are less hard than the id sciences like us, include psychology, sociology, anthropology. There's some grade, there's some grading into the hard sciences and psychology for sure, and anthropology, economics, political science, and also philosophy and ethics. And then finally, there's the I. And the I basically deals with us as conscious beings and consciousness. And so I is studied by the humanities, especially through the arts, poetry, music, and visual arts, but also in philosophy and in religion and psychoanalysis as a part of psychology. So we have these three areas. So right now I'm going to focus on the id area of the natural sciences. So scientists study objects, and they've got to be measurable, quantifiable, testable. And for those objects, for those things, it's a very powerful technique. It's changed dramatically our life over the last 500 years, and even more so in accelerated fashion today. So it's very powerful. Now, along with that science, there's a philosophical underpinnings of that, which is empiricism, which deals with the way in which we perceive the world, which has a lot to do with art. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that in the next few slides. Neurobiology and perception, and a little bit about the history of it. The way, the sort of idea that we have of the way we perceive the world, that we have brains, we have sensory organs, this flow of information, which is basically forms of energy that come into those organs, through nerves into the brain, perception, the object is created in the mind, in the brain, in the mind. That goes back to the end of the 17th century. And John Locke first developed it, and then later on David Hume added to it. But John Locke was in a circle, I think it was the Cambridge Circle. One of his best friends was Thomas Willis, who was the first neuroanatomist. And so John Locke knew about the brain from Willis, Thomas Willis. And he knew about the organs of perception and so forth. So that informed his idea about the nature of perception, which became the field of philosophy known at that time as empiricism. Now, there was a radical dude, George Berkeley, who went the opposite direction, and that was that it's all this, it's all one. There's nothing out there. So it's kind of like Vedanta in Indian philosophy. And so he was an idealist in that sense. And so he was a good counterplay to the empiricists. There's a great movie about all this stuff. I think this is the most popular movie in philosophy courses. It's Matrix, in which we had this sense of the world, just doing an everyday thing, and then people discovered that really, the whole thing was driven by the energy of fetuses that were nurtured in some sort of vast machinery. So there's a lot of fakery in perception, and so this movie pointed it out. That Plato was of the mind that perception was not good enough to really get a real sense of the world, so he felt that refining the intellect might do that independent of perception. And Epicurus, who had a school at the same time on the outskirts of Athens, had the exact opposite view, and that was the only way you could really understand the world was through your senses. So the point then was to refine those senses in such a way that you could be as accurate as possible, because that's what you got. That's the technique of the plan. So now what I want to do is talk a little bit about the brain in that context. I love those old ads. This is your brain. This is your brain on drugs. So I wanted to write moving on to these. I guess I just should have this place. Anyway, so that's the brain, and I'm not a neuroanatomist, by that. So, what the brain is, reading up on it, has 100 billion nerve cells or neurons, most at 4 years of age. Each cell has about 7,000 connections. So that means there's a total of 100 to 500 trillion connections. There was a thing I got in the news today that some Japanese scientists are working with their supercomputer. It's called the A computer. So it's the fourth largest supercomputer in the world. And they worked with a network of about 1.76 billion neurons. And that led to 10.4 trillion synapses. And they considered that to be about 1% of the brain's activity. They ran this program, this is just open source software. It didn't actually do anything. I mean, it didn't actually create any purposeful activity in the brain. It was just synapses arguing back and forth. And they found that it took 40 minutes to simulate 1 second of human activity. But that's where it's going. This is the decade of the brain. We just started this year, and so people are after this stuff big time. We'll talk about it a little bit later. So, one thing about the brain and our understanding of it is that the imagery is really awesome, and the techniques have been developed to image the brain in such a way that it's just beautiful. So, by using stains on neurons, receptors on neurons, you can get different colors, and you can see what kinds of cells are located. You can use functional magnetic resonance imagery to show areas of the brain that are active. Much higher resolution than this now. And you can use a form of fMRI, which is called diffusion tensor imaging, which shows flows of water in axons. So it shows you neural pathways. Beautiful images. And so much of what we're learning about the brain now, this is the decade of the brain, has to do with imaging and trying to relate imaging to function, neural pathways, how different parts of the brain connect to each other, so on and so forth. And I'll talk about some of that work as it relates to the arts. This is just a diagram of the brain. I got all the pictures from a wonderful book, one of these Dorling Kindersley books. They're so beautifully designed. Called the Brain Book, and it shows the different parts of the brain, the forebrain, the more advanced brain, but the cerebrum dominates, especially in us, and other areas in the midbrain and hindbrain. Midbrain very important in emotional responses, and the hindbrain for basic biological functions. So, it started out basically the people were trying to figure out what parts of the brain did different things, and so the technique was really to look at people that had deficits in behavior. And then when they died, you did a dissection of the brain, you looked for lesions on the cerebrum. So you said, oh, that part was damaged and that person couldn't, whatever. So, and that led into the so-called Brodmann areas of the brain. And I'm going to talk about some of these areas just a little bit. I'm going to talk about facial recognition, which is the piezophore face area right here, the face detection. I'll talk a little bit about the visual cortex, because when we make images, there's actually a rough approximation of the structure of that image in the cortex, which is called retinal toping. And then the scene integration is then the parahippocampal place area right here, and then phobias. So I'll talk a little bit about several areas that interact with each other in the brain. So the point is that the way we're trying to figure out how the brain works now is, and this has a lot to do with art, is that we look for function in different parts of the brain, how it interacts with other parts of the brain. And of course now we don't wait for lesions, we put people in an MRI, so you can't be claustrophobic. But they can put a picture in front of you, or they can give you a sound or some other thing, and then they look for activation in different parts of the brain. And so now we have a much better picture of what's going on. And then in the decade of the brain, we have a project in the United States that's in the process now to just keep it going. They're going to map the activity of the brain, what areas do what, and how they interact with other areas, to a resolution of 1.5 cubic millimeters, which is pretty small. And they hope to do this in the next 10 years. So this is a scientific approach to the study of the brain that fits. And so now we divide up all these fields by neuro this, neuro that. There's lots of neuroscience. Neuroanatomy, which all this has in it. Neuropsychology. Neuroeconomics even. Neurocriminology. And neuroaesthetics. So there's a group of people that work on the way in which the brain informs our aesthetic sensibilities. So now, in neuroaesthetics, there's various things I'm going to talk about next, but the basis for aesthetics then should be that there should be certain activities in the brain, certain locations that are associated with aesthetics. And there are patterns, there's facial recognition, there's color, there's scenes. Phobias, these all are things that could have an impact on artistic expression. So we'll just talk about it a little bit here. Patterns. I don't have severe migraine headaches, but those that do may actually experience very, very marked geometric designs in their internal space before they have their headaches. Anyone here have headaches like that? You have those experiences? You may know something like that. So, in another similar way, I won't even ask you if this is true for you. You could take psychedelic drugs and you will have similar patterns in the brain. So there seems to be some sort of ordering in the brain that's activated by these things in the brain, these processes, that's there. And in the case of psychedelics, particularly ayahuasca in South America, it's an inspiration for artistic expression. People have these visions, and then that's reflected. This is a Siona Sequoia guy. You remember Bill Vickers? Bill Vickers was an anthropologist here, and he studied these people his whole professional life. He created that picture for my book. This guy, those diagrams are basically from those experiences, and then this design here, the living design, this painting are based on those experiences also. So these patterns that may actually become very important in artistic expression could be in the brain. There's something that we can experience under certain circumstances. And so that could be a connection between the brain and artistic expression. Another thing is facial recognition. There's a location in the brain, I showed it to you on the map, that is the area of the brain in which faces are recognized and discriminated by the face. And it's a big lump of the cerebral cortex. So it must be important. Now, evolutionary psychologists, and I'll take them up in a minute, think that it was important because you needed to basically you had to be able to detect the threat, whether it be another human being or from an animal. So it was very important to be able to recognize if the animal was dangerous or not dangerous, so on and so forth. So that became important. So the question here is that these structures that can recognize faces, what's the minimum amount of information they need to do to detect the face, for instance? It's actually not very much. And this kind of expression is something that artists use. They may actually create a space with very little information. How little information can they give in a work of art and still have the sense of the space, or maybe the threat of the face? So, and I think also people that like orchids, but there's a lot of us in mind who like orchids. Orchids are attractive to many people because they're kind of like faces. They're bilateral. And so the recognition of an orchid could be in that same area of the brain. Could be connected to that. There's been some recent work on the facial recognition, and what people have found, there's several groups working on this, that the V shape of the face is threatening. Now it could be like a tiger has kind of shape, but also people. So and this review article, they basically drug up some V faces or V shapes of people that they thought were threatening. But they actually did these experiments, and again, they used the imaging, the fMRI. They show people the V, and then show people inverted V. And people, they get a threat response from the V. So just minimally associated with the face. So that's something that art can work on. There's also this notion of beauty in evolutionary psychology that relates to face and body form. And that's, I'll talk about evolutionary psychology in a moment in more detail. And that is that a face is beautiful, it can't be too skinny. It's going to have a little flesh on it because we're going to have more success if we partner with an individual that is healthy, is physiologically healthy. So, and symmetrical, because symmetry is relative. Asymmetry is a result of abnormal development. And also someone who's positive, got a bit of a smile and friendly, because you don't want to partner with someone that's mean and angry all the time. So all of these things have been evolved for us to recognize. And so you have this information in the brain, because it's important to be able to recognize faces for a variety of evolutionary reasons. So faces are important. Color is important, but probably not as important as some people argue. There's thousands of books about, put the wall. For a while there, in the 80s, there was this thing: if you paint jails pink, that that everyone would chill out. It was a bunch of nonsense. In fact, they even got more angry. But it is true, however, and this is pretty culturally broad, and also even found among infants, is that blue and green colors are very calming and peaceful, and maybe even for some people boring, but also cool. And the red colors are active, aggressive. There was a paper I think the paper wasn't in Nature, but it was in a good journal about 3 or 4 years ago, where someone looked at the color of uniforms in the Olympics on certain sports, and they found this positive correlation between the success of the team and the redness of their jerseys. So anyway, there are some color associations that are fairly deep. We have these references. So these are all things that are in the brain that artists could use, and artists do use. And scenes. So this is a whole area of the brain which I showed you, which is basically for the integration and production of scenes. And again, how much information does it take to produce a scene? It seems like the brain uses line drawings, not the masses of the colors of the objects in them are actually picked up somewhere else and put into the scene. So the scene itself, and so this is a great painting by Frederick Church, Heart of the Andes. It's in the Metropolitan Museum. That's a huge painting. When it became popular in the 1860s, they displayed it in a salon in Manhattan, and the lines went around the block. Wait, you can see this one picture. Anyway, so it's a great scene. It's a scene of the Andes. And again, this is sort of the weak part of this science. There's a lot of research on preferences for natural and artificial scenes. And there's a very strong evidence that natural scenes that have greenery, trees, some open area, a water feature, that they're strongly preferred by people, not just in our society, not just a bunch of college students that did the survey, but people from throughout the world. There's a strong universal preference for this kind of scenes. And so there's even now evidence from fMRI that attractive nature scenes activate certain parts of the scene recognition area of the cortex. And there's other evidence that there's a pleasure pathway, there's receptors, opioid receptors in the brain that seem to become more dense as you go further and further in the sensory pathway towards scenes. So the guy's arguing that we like the scenes because we get this pleasant response from it. And then they say, well, that's why we like scenery. And that's why we like scenic painting and so forth, which is pretty lame. I mean, it seems like these people think that that's what aesthetics are about, that you feel good about. And that's far more subtle and complex than that. So, and now with this, how much does it take for you to see that it's a scene? how much information you need in it. And that's something that artists can play with by taking some of the elements out of their painting or the work of art to see whether you still have that scenery response. Now, finally, phobias. I don't like those spiders. I used to see them as a kid. They used to come out of I'd wake up in the morning in my bed and everyone lined up. And I never really liked snakes that much because my mother kept telling me to watch out for the ground snakes. But my son loves snakes. So phobias are not universal, but there seems to be a very strong predisposition in humans, neurally based probably, for the sensing of spiders and snakes. You know, it may not be that it works out as being a phobia or even a dislike, but it's that the brain has a predisposition to see those things. And you can see that predisposition in this. So phobias are something we can work on in art. So now, that's all about that's the good stuff. We got the brain, the neural pathways, we got MRI, so we image this stuff, we see activity, show these links between different parts of the brain. But it's all dead, really. I mean, it's just like a machine. So where's the eye? Where's the consciousness? Where are the layers of consciousness? They're not in that science. They're not able. These it guys cannot study that stuff. Or maybe they think they can, but they really can't. So if we're going to study consciousness and really aesthetics in its fullest sense, our response to nature, our response to great paintings, what have you, we really have to deal with consciousness. And so we have to really focus on the eye, as Kim Over talked about. I guess there's two things in the natural, in biology that have become important over the last 2 or 3 decades. One of them is something called deep ecology. And then there's something very closely related to it called biophilia, which has probably more scientific credits because E.O. Wilson had the idea and got some buddies to write with him about it. Whereas deep ecology was really a bunch of renegades. But it's many very closely related, many of the same philosophical roots. One of the roots behind deep ecology and biophilia is the development of a field called evolutionary psychology. And that field is that basically postulates that there are certain behaviors in humans that have an evolutionary context. They were adaptive. They were positively adaptive at a certain time in our history. So we have a predilection towards certain kinds of things we see. We can say it's predisposition, perhaps, to experience or see it or feel empathy or what have you. And biophilia is basically more explicit about our relationship to other organisms. So it postulates that we have a deep connection to other living organisms. So those ideas, which are in a sense scientific, but they're not testable, are on the root of much of the environmental movement. It's the philosophical part of that movement. And it also has its part in a field of philosophy called phenomenology. We had a real expert on phenomenology here in philosophy until a few years ago, George Kovacs. He was an expert on one of the great German phenomenologists. And my son really got into it. He was a philosophy major here at FIU. We're still talking about it. So the phenomenology, which was sort of the antithesis of the empirical movement of empiricism, really focused on the process of perception. That was his focus of study. And it's still a valid field. So it's a kind of a counterpoint to the empirical model that I talked about before. Now, also mixed in this is psychoanalysis. So now we're talking about the study of consciousness and all its layers, including the unconscious. And psychoanalysis, which really is, so we talk about Freud and also Jung, those guys were evolutionary biologists, seriously. So they believe that these archetypes that can be found in the unconscious were really the result of evolutionary history. They were selected. And it became much more broad and explicit in the work of Jung, who developed the idea of an archetype, which is very similar to this thing I mentioned in evolutionary psychology, which is a predisposition to perception or behavior. So that's what an archetype is. And it could express itself as a dream, it could express itself as a phobia, just a tendency to see things in a certain way. So that became part of the mix of this alternate approach to understanding the I that has a very strong relationship to artistic expression. And then also religious studies and theology, particularly those parts that involve meditation and introspection, which are a vehicle for studying the consciousness. And finally, creativity in the arts, I think, are a very important part of this, because things that we can't write about in a scientific sense, we can write poetry, we can create music, we can create works of art. So the arts then become a very important way of exploring the I. So I'm going to read this little quote. This is Paul Shepard. Do you know, Gene, that Paul Shepard was a student at CHUE. And he wrote his dissertation on cultural ecology or something like that. Anyway, he became an evolutionary kind of ecologist, and he wrote about our behavior. In fact, his last book was called something of the classes. It's about human behavior resulting from evolutionary history.
I actually studied lakes, so this is why this stops.
Anyway, so Paul Shepard, he wrote this little quote here. It just gives you an idea of the flavor of the writing, of the behavior of us and its evolutionary antecedents. The bush apes ancestral to man gradually worked further from the forest. So we're looking at 4 or 5 million years of history here. They took the sea eye out of the gloaming and into the radiance of the open day, though not without some enduring nostalgia. The awareness of glare in the open air and a sense of vulnerability within it have not been completely dispelled. An affinity for shade, trees, the nebulous glimmering of the forest interior, the tracery of branches against the erogenous surfaces, climbing the busy childlike joy of looking down from a height, looking through windows and into holes, hiding the mystery of the obscure and the bright reward of discovered fruits, are all parts of the woody past. Restfulness to the eyes and temperament, unspoken mythological and classy attachments remain part of the forest contributions to the human personality. It sounds like a child. It was not possible to see the forest while in it. Once out, we acknowledged the bond by remaining near its edge, cutting it back to the right distance of planting forest edge growth nearest. So that gives you a sense of the literature for this sort of alternative to the hip view of the world and nature and evolution in our history. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to show you some art. I'm going to give you examples where science has been an inspiration for images. I'm going to sort of look at a little bit as the artist, as a neuroaestheticist, taking advantage of these aspects of our brain to cause predispositions of seeing things in a certain way. I'm not going to talk about this, but I already did. The structure of the brain and the mind can be basically the subject of non-representational work. There's a lot of art that has absolutely no relationship to nature of the world out there. It's all inside. How you mix metaphors to sort of play with our relationship to nature, tease with it. Also, the negative side of nature. Nature is a very threatening place. Maybe all of us to a certain extent. And then nature as a source of creativity. So what happened with me now in this, and how I came to the art side, is that I never had much time as a professor to go to a lot of art museums. I mean, occasionally, if I had a chance on a trip, I would go to a museum. But I didn't do it systematically until I retired. But I used to go to the FIU Art Museum because we had these great, what's her name? She had these great American art today. They have a series of which is in PC, the ground floor in the corner there. And they were great, they were excellent. And so I always went to those. I went to everything in that museum because it was right on campus. I still go to the Frost. Sometimes I just go there for 20 minutes just to chill out, see some art, go back to the tree. So retirement made it possible for me to see art much more frequently. And the arrival in Miami of Art Basel has created a blockbuster opportunity to see art. So what I've been doing over the last several years is I've been sort of using the filter of aesthetics that I've sort of outlined here, these kinds of issues. And I go to Art Basel, you see thousands of artists, you see tens of thousands of works, but I don't see everything. I just sort of have that filter, and I walk around and say, oh, I like, and I go to that. And sometimes the artist is there. You can talk to the artist about, his work, or you can look them up on the internet and you find his artistic statements. So you can learn about these people as you move around. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to just show you some art and then talk a little bit about these kinds of connections. And then when we finish that, we're going to have a short slideshow. So now a little bit about science as an inspiration. So Bonita Helmer, in a series of works called Here Be Dragons, this is in the Art Miami exposition at Art Basel this year, obviously is inspired by the astronomy and the tremendous images that have come from the Hubble telescope, but also from these really large ground-based scopes like in Chile and Hawaii. And so you can see the connection. This is an inspiration for the painting. They're beautiful. They're beautiful paintings. And, here's some other work I saw in Art Miami fair at Art Basel. And Justin Bauer, this is a large painting, by the way, so that was like 8, 9 feet wide, 10 feet high, or something like that. But clearly, Justin Bauer saw some functional MRI images of the brain, which inspired him in his work. And to a lesser extent, Dustin Young, this is a full-size human figure, was also influenced by this kind of imagery as well. Synesthesia, by the way, do you know what that is? Synesthesia occurs when you have input into the brain of different sensory experiences, like you have association of color with letter, or smell or something like that. So it's a mixture of this information as it comes in. And a lot of artists have synesthesia, and sometimes they don't even know it until much later in their life. So these are examples of how science has influenced art. And I saw some amazing things in there, some very complex works where you have basically the laws of physics being shown by things moving around in very beautiful ways. So these people, they must have been engineers as well as artists to do some of that stuff. Now a little bit about mixing metaphors. Here is it's just a way of sort of playing with the fakery of, we're always faking nature. I mean, our senses fake nature. We make it up, put it there, it's in our brain. It's an approximation, perhaps, of something maybe out there. This is an example of an artist who's taken pencil ends. Those are pencils. And he's a local artist, Federico Uribe. And he's created a flower park. So you walk up to, oh, they're very beautiful. And you look at it, this guy's using pencils. So what's that make you think about the art? Because this guy on the right here, this is a mythical being. The antlers, of course, are very natural. These iridescent blue structures are the elytra of beetles that are collected in Thailand. When the beetles, when they're mating, they fly towards the light and then they die, and these elytra fall off, and so you collect piles of them. And so they created it from one kind of organism, transformed it into another kind of organism in the park. So the metaphor here is using the beetle as a life cycle beetle, and he's making it into this creature there. This is an example of, when I saw this, this is all scrap metal. So it's created this meditative figure here. And it's all junk. Just taking junk and made it into something really very beautiful. In a similar way, Anselm Kiefer, this is in one of the fairs at Art Basel. Anselm Kiefer is a German artist. This is in the collection of the Margulis collection. It's always there. And it's a bunch of books. It's on this big concrete base, books and wood and stuff, and it's a bird. It's really powerful. You go and see, when you see it, it's made out of junk, but it has a tremendous presence. It has a very powerful statement about us, the built world, and the natural world. People can use plant material. I like this a lot. With the precedent, of course, is the Arcangolo, this Renaissance artist who did these paintings, I guess in the 17th century, using vegetable parts to make portraits of people. So that's what he did. And more recently, this guy, Claus Enrique, who's actually, I met him at Art Basel a couple of years ago, corresponded with him. He does these figures very similar. In fact, this is a portrait of Arcangolo that Claus Enrique did with plant stuff. And then Philip Haas has basically taken this even further. He's created these three-dimensional statues of human using vegetables and flowers and fruits and so forth. Now this is a landscape. I put this in there because of the use of materials, because so it's a vista, beautiful vista landscape. And the components of the landscape are all postcards. So to use postcards, the kind of thing that you send from like the house, having a great time, mom and dad, blah, blah, blah. And so he's cut them up, and he's created this detail right here. And he's created these landscapes. These two guys work together. Now, exploring landscapes. Landscapes are still a really big part. If you go to Art Basel, there are lots of landscapes in all the shows. So it's still an enduring form of painting that has a lot of resonance for people. What I see, however, is that what's happening is that people are experimenting with less and less and less. So you're getting the absolute minimum of stuff to still evoke the feeling of the landscape. So they're paring it down. And so perhaps unwittingly, they're playing with that area of the cerebral cortex, which scans this information to create scenes. And they're able to find the minimal amount that makes a scene. This is a Chinese, this is in the, I think it was the Rubel collection. They had this bunch of Chinese artists there. And it's a landscape. And it's Power in the Kingdom. This is Marie DeLucas, this is our Miami here. And this is all I just saw this stuff. This is a landscape. She said it's after Constable, but it's untitled. This is another one by Anselm Kiefer. This is in the Margulies collection. It's a really powerful painting, and also it's got wood. It's got other elements in it. This painting, and this is another kind of a minimal kind of a landscape. So these artists are playing with what is the minimal amount, what does it take to evoke an emotional response with very little detail, just feeling it in. People also use the landscape as a motif. And then you look at it close up, so it looks like a beautiful landscape, or bucolic, or pastoral, or whatever. And you look at it close up and say, that's not really that, is it? It's something else. This is Thomas Sanchez, who was best known for his magnificent landscapes of tropical rainforests with a figure sitting at the base, meditating. And here he is, he's creating a landscape, and you far away, it looks like a landscape. You get close up and say, that, what is it? It's all garbage. They get really close, and there's a crucifixion for them. So it's using a landscape to tell us something about the destruction of landscapes and environments. So this one right here, Beach Town, Trevor Young. You get the sense for, it's very foreboding, because you've got these clouds, you've got the light, you've got little lights of the city street here. So it's a landscape that's it's got something in it besides just a breathe. Here's a couple of other landscapes that have a strong environmental significance. This is a photograph. It's actually a staged photograph. I found out the guy was able to get permission to the Catskills to put some vegetable dye in the water, and then I guess they dumped it in, and they very quickly took the photograph. And there's the last Mohican right there. So there's this whole literature about the last Mohican to the Catskills and ventures here. So that's the whole picture of that. So to restage this, but he's altered the environment by having this bloody water going over it. sense of the impact of humanity on these natural environments. We used to have this sculpture here at FIU. It was just west of the library. It was in Mark Gilbert's collection. It was here before he took most of it back. And I could never figure out what it was about. It's just a bunch of rocks with this frame. And it just sort of came to me later on what it was about. That is that we have basically, in our cities, we just covered all the geology. All you get are streets, maybe a little slope here and there. It's all gone. It's all been covered over. And so what he has done is he's shown us, he's revealed that to us by putting this bunch of rocks in this frame in the setting. Right now it's inside the collection, inside the building. And it just reminded me of something I had seen a quote by Thoreau in some other context, so I dug it out. Let us work and wedge our feet downward through the blended slush of opinion and prejudice and tradition and delusion and appearance, that alluvium which covers the globe, till we come to a hard bottom that rocks in place, which we can call reality and say, this is no mistake. How many of you seen this sculpture? So now a little about deeper issues of nature. Of course, nature has with it conveys sexuality, sexual reproduction, death, regeneration, all these things are built into nature, and so they have themes. In our a very important early artists, I mean in the last 30 years, is Anna Mendieta, who did a lot of environmental art, and then did these things in photograph, and they quite often had like a body covered with leaves and things like that. She was an inspiration for a lot of other artists. Naomi Fisher is a very well-known artist in Miami now. I actually knew Naomi when she was about this high, but she's the daughter of Jack Fisher, who's the office. And she has this photograph is actually in the Pan Art Museum, and so she's quite well known for this series of photographs, and so sort of the threatening side of nature. Here's some more of that. This is all from our Basel this year. Armando Murillo shows a woman lying on a branch, and then she's dead, and she's being devoured by fungi. This is Javier Simmons. This is the photograph that's in the Pan Art Museum in Miami. There's a bare-breasted woman here with a pole, and then there's this monster in this forest setting. And then finally, Ellen Coy. This is a photograph I saw in one of the fairs. And it's kind of it's a wetland scene with this body it's kind of threatening. So there's a lot of that. So there's a threatening side of nature, which we probably all feel to a certain extent. And this great work of art in the Pan also, it uses natural materials, all wooden blocks, very rough cut. And it gives a sense of a great urban center that's decaying, going back to nature. And so if you look at it close up here, you can see the elements of all these, the wood that is assembled there. That's also in the Prison Art Museum. These are paintings that were in the Art Museum at FIU for these different shows. And the one on the left is a Dangerous Liaisons. These are just flowers, so it's sort of a flower picture, but it's obviously really full, loaded with sexual innuendo and so forth. So, a very strong painting. And then the guy on the right here, the woman did this painting. It shows a woman, a human figure, and then juxtaposed to the face of the dog. So it's that sort of that biophilia, this connection to all of life, in this case another animal. We are animals. Kind of thing, what this connection is a very deep, powerful connection. Another aspect of art that's been more popular now is that artists are responding to the environmental problems of the world, and they're starting to do work that's related to that. Judith Burton King she actually works out of the Bakery Art Complex, and she does these odd, beautiful drawings, line drawings, just saw this, the day I saw that, I went to Linwood and saw some of the bureaus. I saw these bureaus here. It's right, actually in the heart of Linwood, right across from Linwood Tavern.
Wood tavern.
Huh?
Wood Tavern.
No, it's a Linwood Cafe or something like that. Anyway, there they are. They're funny, but they're not exactly funny. There's something else to them besides just being funny humans. And so maybe they're too. Faking nature. We just got a show in the Frost here. Alberta Baraya, and it was in part it was a collection of herbarium specimens of plastic plants. And it was a great show. He had some other stuff in there too. And it was like he took it really seriously. You know, they're all actually from China, but they were found in like Guatemala or something like that. So he collected them and he displayed them on a herbarium sheet as you would. I was just over Fairchild yesterday. They were pressing, they had these pressed plants and they were mounting them with the sheets. And that's what he's done with this. So it's funny, but it's not just funny. It's like, wow, yeah, they are everywhere, you know. So what do they mean to us? Do they substitute for real plants? The guy wrote a book, designed with this book called What's Wrong with Plastic Trees? So what is wrong with plastic? Are they okay? So there they are. And then on the right, this woman made this sort of a construction. It looks very like a tropical reef. It's all basically made out of dish washing appliances and stuff like that. So beautiful. Actually, it's quite large too. It's very beautiful. And that'd be pretty good. It was like $50,000. Now, I don't have much on cinema, and I must say that, you know, just reviewing this, I used to watch cinema a lot. Maybe I'll start watching more now when we get more time. The commercial cinema has not done a very good job of sort of really exploring this relationship between humans and nature. And Avatar, in a way, I mean, the storyline was terrible, but the construction of the environments, you know, the animals, the way people move through, was really stunning. The story was like, you know, it's like one of these old cowboy movies. Yeah, but I guess the thing that hit me the most is that several years ago, there was this Terrence Malkin did this movie called Tree of Life. How many of you saw that? So Terrence Malkin actually is he's a philosopher. His background is in phenomenology. And in fact, he translated one of the key works of Heidegger. He still uses that translation. And he doesn't make a lot of movies, but he makes some good ones. And the sections of that movie that deal with evolution are really moving. They're really powerful. So I put them in here. I must say there are two movies coming out this year that deal with science and art in some way or another. One of them is Transcendence, and the other one is Interstellar. So now, finally, I'm going to just get a couple more slides and we'll look at this. We'll show at the end here. Turning living nature into art. There's a guy, Patrick Blanc, who's a Frenchman, professional botanist. He's created this concept called the mur végétal. He creates these beautiful walls using tropical other plants, patterns. Become quite famous. He's actually an internationally famous artist. I knew him when he was at graduate school. We spent a month together in French Guiana. At the time, his hair wasn't green. And I remember going to his apartment in Paris, and he had poison arrow frogs over his apartment for this vegetation. So Patrick Blanc was pretty well known for this, and of course he was hired as the expert for the Perez Art Museum in Miami. How many of you been to that museum? Very many. It's a spectacular place. Anyway, these descending columns of vegetation were designed by Patrick Blanc to soften to sort of create the interface between the outside of the building itself, or soften it. So that's something that people are doing now. In Linwood, it's not far from the crocodilian mural I just showed you, is a plant featured by Paloma. She does, she'll sell, but it's 300 bucks a square foot, I think, or no, 150 a square foot. She does vegetable walls. This is display in her shop. So that is another source of expression. So in Art Basel this year, one of the highlights find that here's an art that was actually commissioned. Jim will show for one of the fairs. And it's one of these things where they use, it's particularly popular among Chinese artists. They use mirrors in a certain way to get this infinite reflection, internal reflection. It gives you a sense of great depth. So this is the infinite art. So that's a pretty good sampling of different kinds of art and its relationship to nature and science. So now, what we're going to do, I'm going to read you a little quote here, and then we're going to see some slides that I'm sure. Alexander von Humboldt had a very strong influence on Frederick Church, who saw his landscape part of the Andes earlier, and a whole generation of artists in Europe. And so he came back from this great trip to South America. He measured physical parameters of the environment, the brightness of the sun, the sky, all this kinds of stuff, atmospheric pressure, and so forth. And when he wrote all this stuff up, he wrote considerably about the atmosphere and the environment of the tropics and its aesthetic impact. He wrote a lot about it. It deeply affected him. So he wrote here, this is just one of those quotes, "These relationships would be no doubt sufficient to show how extended is the science which I am attempting to outline here. But the man who is sensitive to the beauty of nature will also find here the explanation for the influence exerted by nature on the people's taste and imagination. He will delight in examining what is called the character of vegetation and the various effects it causes on the soul of the So now, I'm going to show you the environment that Humboldt revered the greatest. That was the tropical rainforest. So this will be a short piece with music and views of the rainforest at all different scales. By the way, the music for the beginning, did you like the music? That was actually Rachel Bryan. She was in a group called Rachel's. Do you know Rachel's as a group? And it was in a CD called Systems Layers. And this piece was called Systems Layers. And this one is Todd Reynolds. It's called The Needle Pulling Thread. And that was finished in 2011. Scout. It's a really great. She does use a form of a tree, and then she puts paper. It's all glass. And her daughter writes poetry, and she uses the poetry of her daughter on the leaves or the pages, the glass pages of the tree. So I'd like to end on a little bit of this poem. I very often. In years to come, this is a promise, will grant you ample time to try the difficult steps in the empire of thought, where you seek for the shining proofs you think you must have. But nothing you ever understand will be sweeter or more mindful than this deepest affinity between your eyes and the world. I guess.
We have the room for a little bit longer and time for a few questions if you have some. I'm sure there's quite a bit that talk inspired.
Yes.
Time to go back to watercolors.
I'm going to start making paper. Even go even further back to that. I'm going to start making handmade paper, and we'll see where that takes.
On the subject of vegetable art, David, I don't know if you're familiar with, I spent a lot of time in Oaxaca, Mexico. If you're familiar with the Night of the Radishes
No.
in Oaxaca, it's a form of old art that I think is fairly new. I think this goes back 2 or 3 decades. December 23rd, every year it becomes a major tourist attraction. All these Oaxacan artists work in radishes. They grow these enormous radishes, and then they carve whole nativity scenes, market scenes, scenes of all kinds, assembled and all carved out of radishes. It's fantastic. I will send you, I put up for friends on Picasa after Christmas, pictures of it. I'll send it to you.
Great, thank you. Yeah.
So, you say that your interest in biology is very influenced by what you find beautiful, and I have to say that I'm biased in the same way as a biologist and an artist. It makes me curious to wonder how many other people have made the decision of their research topic based on beauty or similar ideals, and I wonder if it could eventually lead to some ethical concerns and what your thoughts might be on the general push of biologists to go towards things that they find visually appealing or somehow aesthetically pleasing, and how that might influence our knowledge or conservation efforts and the lack thereof towards things that might be less appealing to our eyes.
Well, 2 things. First of all, if you're going to study something, you better really love it. And that means that it's going to be beautiful or touching, whatever it is, you respond to it. Really good. Because you're going to be with it a long time, and you're going to be through some rough times. Your results are going to be lousy or whatever, so you got to really love it. And if it's beautiful, all of the better. I think all biologists, and we're all grieving all the time. You know that, the place is going to hell in a handbasket. So we're losing species, and so we live with that grief. We don't all necessarily do research in that area, but maybe we teach it, but it's with us all the time. Yes?
At the beginning or at the middle of your talk, you said especially natural scientists, etc., and your emphasis was on natural scientists and art, etc.
Well, I think like as a physicist, physicists think there's a lot more mathematical. They don't necessarily have to see it.
How do you know?
Well, once I know you a little bit.
Okay. My question is, you should include the physical scientists too, because there is beauty in diffraction, reflection, this and that. That's all in there. And also MRIs, this and that you are talking about, are all done by physicists.
Well, I don't mean to exclude the business, though.
Yeah, don't say only natural
I
science.
said,
I was
I said.
Natural science includes physics normally.
Yeah, but biologists.
I didn't say biology.
I think biologists are particularly visual in their approach. Most biologists, more so than physicists, probably. But you're right. I mean, I published a paper with Richard Ball.
Yes, on our university.
He's a physicist.
I know.
Yes.
I know there's been a lot of work being done lately on consciousness. Do you see that maybe consciousness is what mediates between the arts and the sciences here?
I don't know. I don't know what the science is going to be able to do without consciousness. We'll see. I mean, we'll have a decade of the brain, you know, but I don't expect to, you know, we've had a war on cancer for the last 50 years. We don't made some progress. But, so I don't know.
Quantum physics, the idea that the act of observation completes the event.
Yeah.
I mean,
Or changes the event.
Or changes it.
Yeah.
But I mean, that there's an interaction between consciousness and, I don't know, it just seems to me that is the big kind of missing hole.
Yeah, I don't really expect a lot from the hard sciences in this direction. But we'll see. You know, we'll see how much they learn about the brain, where that takes us. Some of the people that have most interesting things to say, like in the cognitive sciences in the literature, are philosophers. And so they mix it up with the neuroscientists. So I don't know.
Can we take one more question? I don't want to impose on David so much. He's given us an awful lot, but it's just one more question.
I just want to make a comment. I advise undergraduates, and I have some broken-hearted undergraduates telling me, I really want to be an artist. I really want to be a musician, but my parents tell me you can't make a living. So can I study environmental studies? And so I then say to them, put the two together, because we desperately need different ways to convey the message. You convey it with scientific facts, but you also can convey it through your art. And so I give them some examples of people who convey their message through their art. But I feel bad for them, because somehow we've divided up, academia into these different areas, and then we've made them incompatible.
Someone used to talk about all kinds of stuff. Didn't seem to hurt us.
That may be a good note. Thank you very much, David.